We've already covered quite a lot from the Pokémon Sword and Shield Direct. There's the wild area, the max raid battles, and Dynamaxing, but we still need to talk about the people. A handful of new characters were introduced, and many of them have quite a large role to play in this adventure. But there's always more to learn. So it's time to send out the old analysis machine to see what secrets and hidden details it can find. Of course, be sure to check out our previous analyses, as we won't be referencing anything already mentioned there. Before we get to the characters, let's take a closer look at the new gyms. We see a familiar scene of the new stadiums before showing off a clearly excited crowd. And this is most certainly the grass gym, as nearly every person is wearing green of some kind. They've got some major hometown love going on. We then see the trainer heading toward the field in his uniform, which has seen a change since the reveal trailer. Before, his number was 227, a reference to the original release day of Pokémon Red and Green in Japan, as well as the date of this reveal. But now it's 65, a seemingly random number. Does this mean that players will be able to choose their number, or is 65 the number that every player will be given? In fact, these numbers have us quite curious. When we get our first look at the gym leader, Milo, as he enters from the opposite side, it's shown that his number is 831. That number doesn't have any significance when it comes to Pokemon, and there's too little information about Milo to say if it's important to him. But we have a feeling that these numbers do matter in some way. After all, as we see later, the champion's number is 1. But for now, we don't know if every number actually matters. As mentioned in the Direct, gym battles are widely loved across Galar to the point that they're televised, and we see this in action during the trailer as a Rotom camera drone flies by the battle. Another Rotom drone can even be seen focusing squarely on the fight. It's a small touch, but it does give the sense that players are seeing how the battle is playing out for people at home. The camera angles shown do give the illusion that this is a bigger deal than ever before. There are even special seats at ground level behind glass to really give it that stadium feeling like a sports event. And this is of course reflected in the player's uniform, which shows off the league symbol, which does have the feel of a soccer league. And then there's Milo, the babyface gym leader with muscles like a bodybuilder. He's a jovial guy, always smiling during the battle. The Pokemon website describes him as having a kind heart, with his credo being to always enjoy battles. He specializes in endurance matches using grass-type Pokemon and is well liked by the trainers of his gym. Now, these 2 points are quite fascinating. The latter point means that other trainers can be faced before Milo, like in past gyms. In fact, it's likely that this huge crowd isn't summoned until the player reaches Milo for a challenge. What has us curious though is the mention of endurance matches. Is this an extra element of gym battles now? Maybe each leader will be focused on a certain aspect of battle in addition to their type. So Milo could be focused on defense or high HP, while other gym leaders could focus on speed or other strategies. We can't be completely certain, but it would help the gyms feel even more unique. As part of Milo's design, he has 6 Pokeballs hanging from his side, potentially giving us hope that more trainers will have a full team to battle. But that's unfortunately not the case, as a screenshot from the website reveals that he only has 2 Pokemon. The screen also shows that weaknesses won't be displayed for players as in Sun and Moon, since Scorbunny's Ember is obviously super effective against grass types. There's still something curious about Milo though. In this scene we can see that one of his Pokemon is in an Ultra Ball. So what could that mean? Does this indicate that he won't be the first gym leader that you face? After all, a screenshot from the Pokemon website reveals that his Eldegoss is level 19. That's typically the level of the second or third gym that players challenge. This could mean that the first gym players encounter is actually the one in the Steam City. But what does his Ultra Ball mean for the player? Is it simply a way of subtly revealing Milo's skill? Or is it an indication that they'll be available in Pokemarts after this fight? That does seem a little early though, as Ultra Balls are not usually stocked until the players have 3 to 5 badges. Maybe it's unlocked earlier, though we kind of doubt it. But the scene itself has both trainers recalling their Pokemon, which could mean that one fainted while the other is replacing that Pokemon, though we think this is part of the Dynamaxing sequence. The Pokemon needs to be brought back into its ball, where the Dynaband then supercharges the Pokemon and Pokeball through the glove that both wear, creating the huge Pokeball that we then see them toss. Our look at the gym comes to an end with the appearance of Galar's champion, Leon, as smoke clears in front of him. But this isn't the grass gym. The stadium is bigger as it features the glass boxes we mentioned before, as well as 2 floors of seats, rather than just 1. This is a much bigger event. The question is this the final battle against Leon, or could players take him on in another capacity before the final showdown? We obviously don't know, but let's take a closer look at what we do know about Leon. For one, his outfit screams champion in a way that few others have. The sports uniform with the sword and shield on his chest, along with a cap with this sharp design, reminiscent of a crown, along with a freaking cape. This guy is a star and he knows it. As we said earlier, even his number is 1, and he might be reaping the rewards that this fame grants. When we see him in Professor Magnolia's kitchen, we get a look at the back of his cape, which is actually covered in sponsorships. That would explain the massive house that his younger brother, Hop, lives in. Interestingly, he also has 2 bands on his wrists. Now, the one on his right hand is his Dynamax band, while the other just has the symbol for the league. Still, we wonder if this element has at least some importance, as the characters we've seen so far only wear 1 band on their wrist. But the thing is, we don't really know much about Leon's personality. The Pokemon website just states that it, along with his skill as he's never been defeated in battle, has made him extremely popular. And we see this in action as he stands in front of the train station of the first town. People are cheering wildly for him, and he even does a pose. He truly is the star of the Galar region. Leon is in this small town for a reason though. From the few scenes that he appears in, he seems to be the one who gives the player and Hop their first Pokemon. So let's talk about Hop and his role as your rival. We do see the starters line up near the rival's house, not Magnolia's. We can see a nearby shed and table next to the battle arena, which can also be spotted during the inevitable first battle against Hop. However, we don't believe the starters are immediately lined up like this when they're first introduced. The Pokemon website has 2 screenshots featuring Sobble and Grookey. Sobble is near Hop's pond, crying, while Grookey is using its stick near a fruit in a tree. We believe this indicates that each starter will have a small introduction to better show off their personalities before the player chooses one. It's a wonderful idea to immediately build a connection, and it seems to be further emphasized after picking one as we see Scorbunny give the player a fist bump. We can't really imagine Sobble doing something like that, so it's likely that each one will have a greeting closer to their personalities. This is also a small taste of how the player character actually emotes now, as we can see her small smile turn into a big one. As we'll show later, the player no longer has a permanent grin with a 1,000-yard stare. After picking your Pokemon, you'll naturally have a first battle against Hop, as we see the 2 of you face off in the arena. He sends out Sobble while the male trainer sends out Grookey, which indicates that he'll pick the Pokemon weak to yours rather than the one strong against it. However, there's a bit of a twist to this. In a screenshot from the Pokemon website, we see the female trainer using Scorbunny against Hop's Grookey. It seems pretty standard until we see that Scorbunny is already level 6, while Hop has 2 Pokemon despite Grookey only being level 5. So could this mean that Hop gets both of the starters that you don't choose? After all, it is his brother that's giving away the first Pokemon. Or is it possible that Hop already had another Pokemon on hand? We can't say for sure, but another oddity is the player trainer. In this battle, neither the girl nor boy are wearing their backpack yet, which makes sense as they haven't begun their journey. But then there's the scene where Scorbunny gives a fist bump. This would seem to be where the player chooses their partner, and yet here she has her backpack. So what's going on? Do players get to use a starter before the official selection is made? It would explain why Scorbunny is level 6 in the screenshot, but there's no way to know for certain. After this battle, we presume the next destination is Professor Magnolia's house. We hesitate to call this a lab as the player, Hop, and Sonia are all obviously inside her kitchen. Plants are everywhere, and there's even baskets of freshly picked vegetables in the background. but the scene just before does feature Sonia in the familiar library setting that we saw in the original trailer, so it's not too surprising that Magnolia's house is also her lab. As we mentioned in our previous analysis, growth seems to be a major theme in Sword and Shield. This is taken both literally thanks to Dynamaxing, and perhaps figuratively as Magnolia's home is covered in plants, has a garden outside, a greenhouse, and even her home is nearly overtaken by a tree. Yet despite all this plant life, her main focus of research is said to be the Dynamax phenomenon. What connection could there be between plants and this new ability? At the very least, we're pretty sure this is where players will receive the new Pokédex, and this is likely guided by Leon as we see him in the kitchen with Magnolia and near her front door as she greets the young trainers. A lot of attention has been paid to her cane, with many presuming it to be a pre-evolution of Corviknight, but we think it's just Corviknight itself as the ridges on its head match. Amusingly, both Magnolia and her granddaughter Sonia have a way of twirling their fingers when talking. Magnolia around her glasses, and Sonia with her hair. It's a subtly cute family trait. Now, unfortunately, we don't learn much about Sonia during this direct. The Pokemon website mentions that Magnolia gave her a certain unnamed research task, but she's also there to offer help and advice to the player. In fact, we see her hand over something in Magnolia's library. This could be the Pokédex, or maybe the Dynaband is given early since there's such a fixture of Galar's gym battles. Though that might not happen until players reach the Grass Gym Town, as she's also met there. Still, her full role is certainly a mystery. That's all the name trainers we know of so far, but there's still a few trainer classes that can be seen throughout the trailer. The first is when the player is heading toward Magnolia's home. A trainer awaits just before the small bridge. It's difficult to say from this distance, but we think it might be a youngster. Now, we did see a young boy with a grubbin in the previous trailer, but rather than a youngster, he may have been the new preschooler, as this boy looks at least a little older. We have a better look at the next trainer who's just outside the Grass Gym town. Based on his overalls, we're pretty sure he's a breeder, as that's what breeders wore in Sun and Moon. However, that outfit was a little different from what came before, so it may be possible that he's a new farmhand trainer class. We do see farm equipment in the area after all. But if we had to choose one, we're going to go with him being Galar's version of a breeder. The next trainer is on a path lined with trees. We don't get a good look at her, but she does carry a Pokeball and a cell phone, so we think she might be the new design for beauties. The scene then shifts back into the caves from the first trailer, which is now populated by a trainer. Based on his outfit, he's very likely the Galar version of a worker trainer. Finally, we see the new look for the Black Belts as one hangs out near the ice flows to the northeast. Okay, we're almost done here, but there's still a few things that we wanted to mention. First of all, there are no text boxes to be seen anywhere in this trailer, despite the fact that multiple characters including Milo, Leon, Sonia, and Hop all have pretty complex mouth movements with no real pause given. While text boxes are undoubtedly going to be in the game, it's appearing pretty likely that at least some form of voice acting might be featured as well. Now, we're not completely sure on this, as areas that were empty in the previous trailer are now populated, so hiding text boxes shouldn't be that hard. But it does raise some suspicions. And somewhat related to this is how much more the player-trainer emotes throughout this direct. We mentioned the joy of meeting Scorbunny, but then there's also the moment when summoning a Dynamax Pokemon. But both of these are big events. Maybe smaller scenes don't get that same love? Well, we don't think that's the case. There's a moment when the player and Hop are riding on a train, likely after the first town. Both are looking at their Pokédexes with the players being red and Hop's blue, but at one point Hop stretches and in reaction, the player gives a big smile. Even when the two are looking at their phones, the player looks engaged. For the first time, player characters are actually going to look like they care about what's happening around them. But speaking of the Pokédexes, we get more information on them thanks to the Pokemon website. This time they're part of something called the Rotom phone. So Rotom is joining the journey once again, but he'll be able to do more than just act as the Pokédex. He can also receive special upgrades so that when he's attached to the returning bike, it'll move faster on land or even help travel across water, which we do see in the trailer. So the Rotom phone in conjunction with the bike seems to be how HMs are replaced in Sword and Shield. It can likely even call for the Corviknight taxi. It really is a Pokemon lift. Finally, we see what online battles will look like in the game, as well as the symbol for them. It's similar to what we've seen in the past, except they're modeled after the gym stadiums. Considering the fact that Dynamaxing can be used online, this setting makes a lot of sense. After all, it's one of the few places that it's actually allowed. But that's everything that we could find in the Pokémon Sword and Shield Direct. There's a lot of fun changes coming to the game, along with characters and elements that have certainly piqued our interest. We're looking forward to seeing what else the 8th generation has to offer. Of course, if we missed anything, let us know in the comments. And don't miss our previous analysis on the wild area. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Pokemon and other things gaming.